For Comedy Hype News, I'm Symphony Thompson. In 2009, ABC News reported that there are 1.8 million more black women than black men, which means that if every black man in America was to marry a black woman today, 1 out of every 12 black women still wouldn't get married if they hoped to marry a black man. The article goes on to explain that 21% of black men do not have a high school diploma, 17% are unemployed, and 8% are incarcerated between the ages of 25 to 34. What you're left with is 54%. 54% of black men that black women wouldn't find acceptable. Enter Steve Harvey, who sees these statistics and says, admittedly, the selection of men is slim, but there are still a lot of good men out there who are being overlooked. There are a lot of women, though, who are trying to match up their education level, who are trying to match up their corporate status to find somebody on the same level, and they are having trouble. Harvey explained that black women don't have to settle, but they need to compromise.
You a corporate exec, does he have to be a corporate exec? You make $150,000 a year. He has to make $150,000 or above?
The question is, when did Steve Harvey become a relationship expert? Harvey is currently in his 3rd marriage, which proves he's not always right when it comes to love and marriage. Despite Harvey's shortcomings in his own relationships, single black women still listen to what he has to say. With the statistics I just mentioned earlier, it appears that single women yearn to get insight on exactly what men are thinking, and that's exactly what Steve Harvey does. He feeds single women exactly what they want to hear, lets them know what men are thinking, whether or not it's something they want to hear.
You don't know how to pick a man. If you don't have a good man, it's not the man's fault. You picked the wrong damn man.
Here's why single women trust Steve Harvey. First, it's the way he dresses. Steve Harvey started doing comedy in the mid-'80s, right in the middle of Eddie Murphy's era. Before Eddie Murphy, nearly all comedians wore suits on stage and tried to be adults. When he's performing, Steve always makes sure he's dressed to impress. From head to toe, the young Steve carried an air of distinction that no lady of the world could miss. He had that suave flavor, the crisp in trousers that said, "You can look, but don't touch." The high top fade, slick, sliced, and smooth out at the edges. Steve had it, and the ladies wanted it. Power suits were the fashion of life when Steve was on the comedy scene. Steve spoke with charm and portioned out vulgar and obscene speech in his performances. Mr. Harvey's style is outstanding because style, not fashion, holds weight in the perception and thereof connection with him and the ladies. Women love a man in a suit. To them, it's a man at their best. It raises your profile, makes you look like you've got a job, something that women cannot get enough of. In 2015, Complex did a study to see if women prefer men in a suit or simple streetwear. The consensus was that a suit gets the job done. However, if you do have a suit, you better make sure it fits. The fit of a tailored suit is just as important, and that's something Steve had to learn. In 2016, while on the Steve Harvey talk show, Harvey said that his wife Marjorie completely changed his style once he met her. Before becoming his wife, she told him to stop wearing the square-bottom suits, shorten the pants, and bring them in. Steve listened to his woman because he knows women are always right. Steve got his own line of suits to help out those men who need help impressing their women. Aside from Steve's style, women can appreciate the fact that he listens to what women want and what they're looking for. One recurring segment that attracts women to the Steve Harvey Morning Show is Shirley Strawberry's Strawberry Letter. Miss Shirley would recite the letter, give off some comments from the sheer reaction of the question, then she'd jump into the advice. This shifted one day when Steve interjected with his contemplations. You have to know that it wasn't just any comment, it was Steve Harvey's insight. At the time, Steve Harvey already had his hit sitcom and was one of the kings of comedy. Steve's advice was old-fashioned. He sometimes spent half of the show dissecting the writer's hot mess situations. This was something that struck and made noise, especially ladies who tried to grapple the ever-changing landscape of relationships with men. Steve's advice was practical, spiritual, and brutally honest. Everything that women were looking for when giving advice. Steve being introspective was reminiscent of a father figure. The father figure archetype is rooted in Harvey's counsel. Steve routinely references past marriages and his children in his responses, so it was clear he had experience and knew what he was talking about. Creating a down-to-earth reflection to his life allows women to see themselves in Harvey's shoes instead of their own, giving a way of new perspective. Steve regurgitates age-old beliefs and opinions, just like your dad used to, or, in a lot of cases, never did. The name Strawberry Letter comes from the 1971 song Strawberry Letter 23 by Shuggie Otis. In 1977, the song would become more popularized due to the cover by the Brothers Johnson and production from Quincy Jones. Otis wrote the song when he was 17 as a way to describe his feelings for his girlfriend. It's a love song and women love themselves a story filled with romance. Steve Harvey knows exactly how to cater to his audience because the Strawberry Letter would leave a diabetic sweet tooth in a woman's mouth for the advice of Steve Harvey for years. The release of Harvey's 2009 book, Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man, gave women even more reasons to trust Steve Harvey's outlook on relationships. Describing the purpose of the book, Harvey used a sports analogy by comparing the book to an opposing team's playbook. This was supposed to give women an insight on a man's playbook to give women the advantage. In the book, Steve Harvey would tell women, if you're in a committed relationship and you want to get the ring, this book is for you. If you're married and you want to regain control and strengthen your bond, or if you're tired of being played with, then I want you to use this book as a tool to take each of the principles, rules, and tips in this no-nonsense guide and use them to anticipate a man's game plan, and to counter with an offense and defense that's unstoppable. It may sound absurd now that ladies picked up a book on how to get it together for a man, especially due to the fact that the man who wrote the book had been married 3 times. Steve wrote the book in the tone of the perfect man for the perfect lady. These books were meant to give ladies practical steps to get themselves together so that they could find and keep a man. After a couple years of receiving the warm, reassuring direction through Strawberry Letters, ladies were ready to welcome new matching orders. The book was well received by women. Aretha Franklin even gave a review saying, "Women should listen to Steve Harvey when it comes to what a good man is about. Steve Harvey dispenses a lot of fabulous information about men, which shows that women appreciate Harvey's openness and willingness to help women out by spilling men's secrets." The book was then turned into a hit film in 2012 and it spawned a sequel in 2014. The success of the book and the films are enough to prove that women took Harvey's advice because he knew what he was talking about. In 2012, Steve Harvey began his self-titled daytime TV talk show. Historically, daytime TV was targeted specifically for women while their husbands were away at work. Game shows, soap operas, judge shows, and talk shows were all created with the housewife in mind. The content generally focuses on romantic and family relationships, stories with a lot of drama, but little action. The target audience of daytime talk shows is evident in the talent they chose to host these shows. Programs like The View, The Real, and The Talk all feature panels of women giving their perspective on various topics. Many of Harvey's segments would cater towards women, who made up a large majority of the audience. Relationships, parenting, marriage, family life, the list goes on. Steve Harvey is talking directly to women on his show, and the topics he chose prove that it had everything to do with what women would enjoy. Women love a man that listens to them, and Steve Harvey's segment choices make women feel like he's listening to what they want. If you look at Steve's earlier stand-up specials, women are the majority of the crowd, so they've been listening to him for a while. Who knew that women would listen to relationship advice from a man who tells jokes for a living? But that may come from having no one else to look to for these kind of things. Steve is the only one of his stature making content that appeals to single black women, and because he's catering mostly to women, they respond by listening to what he has to say. Stay up to date with the latest news and comedy by subscribing here to our YouTube channel and follow Comedy Hype across all social media. For Comedy Hype News, I'm Symphony Thompson.